Good morning. I hope you're doing great, doing awesome in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening. This is one of the workshops that I hope that in the coming months or days or maybe years, colleges and universities around the country and in general start to adopt in their teaching of English for their students, especially those people who study bachelor, because they are setting the foundation for the future teachers slash translators slash interpreters. So they need to have a realistic exposure to English aside from the theories that are obsolete, that do not deem that much of memorization or rote learning for, as some professors slash colleges do, or in particular departments that they have that this kind of philosophy that we need to build our future generation of teachers and instructors and translators on the fact that we show them where language came from. So this is a completely different philosophy where we need to adopt technology as an assistive tool to introduce it to the students and help them understand the structure of English and how it is used in real life, whether that's for translation or interpretation or getting an organic, authentic sample of listening so people can practice their translation and their learning of vocabulary from, and in general, ending up being a good speaker. Because eventually, colleges train people to become the better version of the specialization that they are in. Correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're teaching translators without giving them the exposure to the realistic software that they need in their field of study and in their field of work, what's the point of teaching them? Yeah, getting their grades and giving them the marks at the end of the month. So you satisfy the college standards and eventually satisfying the universities and the Ministry of Education or Ministry of Higher Education. That's pointless and insignificantly. What students need in reality is the real exposure to English, learning how to use softwares for translation and software for interpretation, and learning on using the real devices in conferences, in addition to having them able to produce, because the journey of the student through college is to convert them from consumers of information to producers of information. So if you're not generating or creating a generation of people who produce language efficiently, effectively, fluently, accurately, there is no point of education, because this kind of knowledge is without foundation and it's baseless. Anyways, setting this kind of topic aside, what we're looking for here is a short sample. I'm not going to go through extensively the long interview with King Abdullah. I chose King Abdullah because he speaks British English, very diplomatic English. He's a native speaker. He's an Arab. He's a bilingual person, 100%. And why I like him, there are actually many reasons. I'm not going to cover them right now, but we can talk about this sample and then analyze it from the point of view of an English teacher who wants to introduce you to the real English, diplomatic English. There are two features here that I really love when he speaks. He speaks to a person from the Monitor International, or it's an agency or company. You can Google it. It's not my concern right now. My concern is just looking at the sample of the waves. What you notice here is the wave of the sound of the human being. And this wave, um, I'm not going to go through the technicalities again of the software. I'm using GarageBand for Mac to play this recording. and I'm gonna have to pause it multiple times for sake of clarification of certain points. There are two salient, outstanding points of this discussion. There, there are two salient parts for this discussion. Number one, King Abdullah uses many phrasal verbs. So the speech is based on phrasal verbs. He's using that intentionally or unintentionally for the sake of making communication friendlier and clear to the listeners, to the audience that he's targeting. So he's not reading from a piece of paper. What he's doing is just maintaining a conversation with the host here, and then uh, they're both exchanging their roles here. But the most important thing is that the kind of speech is very formal. However, it has so many phrasal verbs. I'll attach around 100 phrasal verbs that I came across as a form of PDF. Kindly was shared by one of the schools in the United States, and I just grabbed it, and then I'm gonna post it to our Telegram page because it wouldn't allow me to post the direct, PDF on Facebook for some um, algorithmic reasons. So what I'm trying to tell you here, let's get started with listening and get a sense of what we are talking about here, because that's very important. As a student of English, as a scholar, as a researcher, you need to pay very keen attention to the fact that learning and studying are not the same. What we're learning here, I'm not, I'm not, I'm not teaching you to study. I'm teaching you to learn, and there's a big difference. And if you want to know the difference, I'm not the dictionary. You can Google the difference between studying and learning. What we are working on here is to help you get a real, authentic sense of the real English out in the field that you don't come across in the classroom, or rarely you come across in the classroom. What you see in the classroom is, mm, let me see, the tenses of English, English literature, Shakespeare's sonnets, Charles Dickens, respectively, um, and some obsolete slash archaic information or knowledge that is based on the 70s and 80s. We need to cover data quickly if you're presenting it, and then move to the real AI level kind of technology to help students expedite, speed up their learning and their experience, enrich them with experience. Your Majesty, thank. So here, the speaker is saying Your Majesty, and he's using the word majesty. Now, the word majesty here, jalalatek. And let me just put it here. So, Your Majesty, your Majesty, which means sa'adatakum. Maybe he's using that kind of entitlement for the king of Jordan, King Abdullah, to kickstart. Kickstart. Listen, this phrasal verb, kickstart, kick, start, or kick off. Let's say kick off. To start. نبدأ. This is some people say it's very informal, but it was used in this kind of context. So the point is, if you're maintaining a good, vibrant conversation like this, make sure to use a multitude of expressions just to show you, uh, to show the horsepower of language that you have, that you possess. Eventually, you're impressing and making people change their minds in regard to some political, very sensitive, sticky situations, like the sticky situation between Israel and Palestine. He has a standpoint, but I'm not going to go politically zealous to talk about the history or historical background and give you a brief background of what's going on in this matter, because it's very known for majority of people. We're looking at snippets, some samples of his speech to show you the way. There's a philosopher who used to say, we cannot teach the man. We show them the way and they can take care of themselves. So what I'm trying to show you here is grab a free software like Audacity. If you like, I can put a share link to it in the description of the video, and you can download it and try to see how you can listen to the wave of the human being, and you see it like these waves. These are the frequencies. We call them the low frequencies, the mid frequencies, and the high frequencies. And usually the high frequencies like these carry the DNA of the sibilant sounds like se, she, fe, ve. These are the sibilant high sounds. The mids are the one that are not settling in the bank, in the bottom of the bass sounds, or the low sound, the low frequencies of the the human frequency, the audible frequency, which is 20 dp to 20,000 dp, or minus 20 dB to plus 20,000 dP, something within this range. Look here,
It's an honor.
he is saying it's an honor, يعني من الشرف, but he's saying it's in honor. Now, I got a question for you. If honor is an uncountable noun, why is he saying it's an honor? If you look this word in dictionary, honor, you might come across something like well, there are two variations of it. There's honor with you and there's honor without you. Honor. They're not saying if it's countable or it's not countable, but the point is we cannot say honors unless it's a verb. So why is he saying it's an honor? Maybe it's a question that we need to pause to ChatGPT.
It's an honor to have you here, be the
And to
keynote
have you
speaker
here
at our
is to
first.
be with us here. So we can definitely say it's an honor to have you here. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for coming here. But to have you here is the standard, it's the common expression that we normally hear in conversations of this kind, of this form.
Your Majesty, thank you. It's an honor to have you here, be the keynote speaker.
So to have you here be the
Your
king,
Majesty, thank you. It's
the key speaker.
Your Majesty,
Key speaker, keynote speaker,
speaker at our first.
keynote speaker هو the المتحدث الرئيسي. So the keynote speaker متحدث الرئيسي للجلسة. So we call this kind of person the keynote speaker. Keynote speaker. Now listen to how we say it.
At our first.
Look here. If you look at the wave of how he says at, he's not overstressing it. He's not saying it from his heart. He's just marginalizing it as if it's a minority preposition. And the reason of which is because it's a function, not content word. And function words like prepositions tend not to be stressed at all, unless we intentionally want to stress it for some metaphorical purposes or for some intentional purposes. We don't stress the prepositions here. And if you look back, if you listen carefully, so what he's doing here, he's pretty much stressing the word first. It's an adjective. So he's adding so much stress to the adjective over the stress given to the preposition. And the reason of which is because an adjective, it's a function, it's a content word. It's a word. By the way, let me explain. There are two kinds of, in general, there are two kinds of terms in English. not terms. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to confuse you here. There are two varieties of or words in English. There's the content words and the function words. Simply, content words are words that carry meaning in a sense that this meaning is not grammatical. For example, beautiful, new, professor, college, water, sky, airplane. These kind of content words that carry meaning, that without this kind of word, the whole sentence would be meaningless. Function word is a word that serves a grammatical purpose, that without its presence, the structure of the sentence is going to be syntactically unstable. So, and that's for the specialist. Definitely they understand what I'm saying here. Anyways, come back here to this point.
At our first,
So here, if you look, this is the adjective. And see how big stress. And the stress is the width of the frequency he is just throwing out of his mouth. Here, this is at our first. And it's like a millisecond, he says at our first.
Middle East Global.
So global summit
Middle
means
East Global Summit.
القمة العالمية for Middle East. Of course, Middle East is very common expression in English because all trouble in the world are coming from Middle East. الشرق الأوسط. Going back here, and as you notice, I'm gonna share this audio, should you like that, on Telegram. It's going to be very beneficial for you, I guess, to just get a sense of it and understand the speech that is that we are sharing here.
Middle East Global.
So we call it Middle East Global Summit.
Middle East Global Summit.
And then he's saying very interesting expression. Look, we can think of no one.
We can think of no one. We can think of no one.
And look, he is pretty much stressing no one.
Think of no one. We can think of no one. We can think of no one. We can think of no one.
See, the beauty is that we can think of as if he's marginalizing his thinking and everyone within his field of interest. And he is pushing for the no one because he's just showing how valuable that King Abdullah's presence is, for them.
Better to kick off.
Now, some people might say that the word kick off that I just have shared is a very casual, informal, maybe not carrying that level of respect or formality or the academic DNA to be said in this kind of summits. But actually, I completely disagree. This is a very it's a term, it's used, it's very common. It happens to be friendlier because the kind of session that they're doing here is face to face, and they're very close to the other journalists. So they're doing this kind in a very friendly atmosphere. He's not presenting something in front of the presidents of the world in UN. He's having this kind of small discussion for around 15 minutes, and he is going through that in a cordial kind of atmosphere.
This series.
Thank you very much.
So let me ask.
So King Abdullah here interrupts. He cuts in. So he cuts in, يقاطع, and says thank you very much. And then the ball again is in the court of the speaker.
So let me ask, is a true peace process and the two-state solution.
And when he says two-state solution, it's a very diplomatic, political kind of expression that is used when they talk about the issue or the state of the Palestinian and Israeli state. But the two-state solution is the solution that is proposed in UN, where there should be two states, the state of Palestine and the state of Israel.
Process and the two-state solution possible with the current Israeli government.
This is very sticky, kind of sensitive question to be asked. And the best person to answer this kind of question is, of course, King Abdullah.
How do you approach your dealings with Israel?
He's saying, how do you approach your dealings with Israel in this regard? كيف تتعامل مع القضية? He's going to answer, but I'm not going to answer. I'm not going to go further because this kind of short workshop is to help you understand the concept of the sound analysis here. It's very important. So you need to practice using this kind of form, listen more, satiate your ears with this kind of workshop of training and listening, and I assure you, you will be better. For English departments, please use this kind of method with your students and teach them how to use this software or practicing English. Repetitive listening is really important, especially when it comes to them sharing and engaging in this kind of group and team translation or discussion. Thank you very much. And if you like it, we can definitely continue this series of training.
So, yes, I am an optimist, and I believe we're actually at a critical crossroads because there's a multitude of issues. So there's two elephants in the room that we always have to discuss. One is Palestinian transition and future for a younger generation of leaders, and we saw Mahmoud Abbas in the past month shaking up the government, new blood coming in. So that's one of the issues that we have to understand, where are the Palestinians going. And part of the challenges is we, Jordanians, Arabs, Israelis, Americans, do not know who the younger generation of Palestinians are. And this is very, very important for us to be able to reach out to these young voices. The second elephant in the room is, where is Israel going? How can we have an understanding of a political horizon? Is it a one-state solution that you want? Is it a two-state solution? And I'm sure your state solution is different than mine. Mm-hmm. These are the things that are being unplugged. My experience over the past 20 years is politics doesn't work. The opportunities that we have that break down these barriers is what we're talking recently about, regional projects. And so how do we invest in each other in such a way where actually your success is my success? That's beginning to trigger in people's minds. And this is the new narrative that's out there that gives us hope.
The U.S. is pushing ahead, trying to pursue a full peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. That initiative has stumbled when it's come to Israel because the current Israeli government has so far resisted any accommodation dealing with the Palestinians, even though Prime Minister Netanyahu wants peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Do you support this effort? Do you think it's a possibility?
Well, we and the Egyptians and many others are working to make sure that this deal is successful because, again, I think it brings us through a new horizon. But I think part of the challenges is with the Israeli government, this belief, and by some in the region, that you can parachute over Palestine, deal with the Arabs and work your way back. That does not work. And even those countries that have Abrahamic Accords with Israel have difficulty moving publicly on those issues when Israelis and Palestinians are dying. So unless we solve this problem, there will never be a true peace. There's something that Saudi Arabia wants, there's something that the Israelis want, there's something what the Americans want. What you have to add to that component is, what do the Palestinians get out of it, and actually what does the region get out of it, because we're all invested in this together. So it's having that ability to look at the slightly bigger picture and not think tactically, which is what is being talked about now. I hope from now towards the end of the year, we'll tick a lot of these columns that makes everybody happy. And the best deal, from my humble experience over my life, is when everybody walks away from the table slightly unhappy. And this is what it's going to take, I think, to push us over the finish line.
Your speech to the UN General Assembly yesterday conveyed a sense of urgency on the subject of refugees. Is the international community not getting the message on refugees? And what more could and should the U.S. and international institutions be doing to assist refugees in Jordan and elsewhere, and why is this crisis being ignored?
Well, whenever you have crises around the world, you're going to have fatigue, and that does happen to the subject of refugees. And again, we are slightly thrown off center because of what's happening in Ukraine, so people want to look closer to their borders, although this is a problem that's going to come back and haunt all of us. The international support has dwindled dramatically. We're getting nothing compared to what we as a government are trying to put into support. And in Jordan, Syrian refugees have access to our healthcare system, to our education system. They have jobs. They are treated as normal citizens. But we have 20% unemployment. And that can only get worse with the challenges that we have in the region if we have another wave of refugees. And I think people take Jordan for granted because we're going to do the right thing, we don't get the support that we did.
Let's turn to the theme of integration in the region, which is the theme of this conference. It's been central to Jordan's region and regional and international policies, Jordan is, of course, not just a buffer, but a bridge in terms to engagement and peaceful cooperation. The Hashemite Kingdom has been at the center of several regional and international projects. You alluded to some of these earlier, between Iraq and Egypt, industrial and other partnerships in the Gulf, and even the recently announced Mideast India Rail and Transport Corridor. If I could, please, let's start with Egypt and Iraq, and particularly Iraq. There's been some fantastic progress in terms of cooperation over the past few years under your leadership. What does this model mean for Jordan?
Well, again, I think the wise counsel of our friends in Egypt to really reach out to the Mustafa Kadhabi government then is to create this trilateral relationship is because we could see that the rebuilding of Iraq, including the three countries, but also opening it up to the West, was so important to us. So Baghdad 1 basically opened the challenge to all of us of how do we get regional projects, water conveyance, energy conveyance, railroad infrastructure, logistical bases that all of us can benefit from. And again, with the new initiative from the Saudis, that only adds to that possibility.
You wrote that this 12 years ago, that our last best chance for peace comes at a time of peril. Are we in a time of peril? Is it more perilous now? And how do you see Jordan and the future of the region in 5 to 10 years?
So for the first time, I think we're at the crossroads of opportunity. The economic prosperity potential is, I think, what breaks down borders. Because at the end of the day, most people will vote for peace if they can put food on the table for their loved ones.
Thank you for a great conversation and for joining us today. It meant